Welcome to Upside, the podcast for brand owners, brand managers, and people who really want to grow online. I'm Ali, alongside my co-founder Zamir. We help brands launch and grow in online marketplaces. In every episode, we bring you conversations that help change the way you think about growing online. So here's the reality of selling online these days. Your customer has never met you. They can't touch or feel or inspect the product. They're surrounded by thousands of other brands, all shouting and yelling the same things. So the real question isn't, how do I sell my product? It's, how do I get them to believe me in the first place? Today's guests, Dr. Kishan Rees, yes, he's a real doctor, and Cormac are from Bayer, one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. They've built an entire content system built around that very question in an industry where trust is literally life and death. The lessons they've learned are things that every brand owner needs to hear. By the end of the episode, you have a whole new way of thinking about trust, and you'll have lessons that you can implement today in your own business. Let's go. All right, so a common theme that we get with everything online and the internet, which is getting harder and becoming more complex, is trust, right? How do you, when you're selling, in our context, when you're selling, how do you convince the customer that this is a product that should be trusted, the platform should be trusted, you're going to deliver on what your promises are and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And what I love about today's conversation is that we are here with two experts in the field of trust.
Thanks. That's very kind. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say that.
Welcome to the pod, guys, and Upside. Kish and Cormac, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Woo. Okay, well that was.
Thanks for trusting us in your studio.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
So, tell us about trust and what you guys think. Where does this all come in? How do you guys fit into the world of trust?
I think I'm glad that you mentioned it's a challenge. Because it certainly is in a noisy, digital, congested environment where everybody's screaming and shouting for attention. Yeah. And certainly in the work that we do at Bayer and in life sciences, we are in a position where A, some people don't know about us, and B, some people might not trust big pharma as an industry. Yeah. So that almost compounds the issue and makes it even harder. And the way that we look at it is very simple. If somebody is giving us a bit of their time and they're trusting us to spend time in some of that really busy, noisy environment, we've got to reward that trust with quality content that actually helps and makes a difference. Because then it's only through multiple touch points, which you guys will know all about in terms of the 7 stages of selling, we see that selling as, certainly from Cormac's and I's perspective in terms of content, in terms of there's no physical sale, but it's them giving us their time with our materials and our content. Does that help to... And for people who are watching and listening in, so just to kind of give that a bit more context as well. So what you guys do in the world of big pharma, because you get a lot of bad rep, there's issues, things around that. And so what you guys do is you create content for Bayer, and the objective there is to inform potential customers and people who are just in the space around various medical conditions, potential treatments, that kind of stuff. That's kind of where you guys fit in? Is that right? I think it's everything. It's slightly more broad than that, right? So in the sense that it's an end-to-end content service from concept to can to customer, whoever that customer may be. It might be a patient, it might be a member of the public, it might be a carer, it might be a healthcare professional. And we offer this white label service called DCAM, where we essentially help teams who may not be as au fait with media environments and content to create content where they can get their story across, where they can get their messages across. Because we have the absolute privilege of working with some of the best thought leaders in the world. And Cormac will share his reflections on that.
I was just going to say, I picked up the first abbreviation, which was DCAM for the people who don't know what it is. This was a process
there may be more.
Exactly, there probably will be more. This was a process that we brought in maybe 2 years ago now, which is called the Digital Content Accelerator Method, which basically allows us to have, like he says, the end-to-end content delivery from the first idea right to the end. And the reason we did this because we started off when Kish came into Bayer. Obviously, I was already creating content for the communications team. But there were so many pieces of content and it dated back to years and years and years.
That's really interesting because in the kind of broader context of like the digital space, right? there's so many people just sharing out medical advice, medical information.
Or misinformation, I would say.
Exactly. That may not be correct, right? Especially in the world of like influencers and TikTok, where people anyone has a microphone.
And a handful of podcasts, I would say, as well.
Yes.
That may be very well listened to.
That will share information about stuff. And then you guys come in to basically be like, no, this is actual information that we're sharing.
I was going to jump in there, and it's coming back to the point of trust, right?
Yeah.
When we're putting out lots of different content across different brands and different therapy areas, people won't trust what they've heard 1,000 times. If any pharma company can say it, it's too generic and it's not going to work online. It's just going to be the same messaging across the board.
Yeah.
And especially now in times of like artificial intelligence, where people can basically put in the same prompt and it's obviously going to generate something different, but it's going to be very similar. How do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, Kish, weren't we, about the ways that we can differentiate ourselves. And coming on to the point of what we were talking about was we built internally Bayer opinion leaders, so using our own people to front content and deliver our message on their channels.
I'll come in on a couple of points. The misinformation piece. So we're living in an environment where it's a prosumer environment. Everyone can produce and consume content.
Oh, prosumer.
I love that.
I took that from a book. I can't remember which one, so I can't reference it. I didn't make that up, but it's a real thing.
Jargon number 2.
A prosumer environment. And I look at this as like a clinical content creator. So, 10, 12 years ago when I was a junior doctor, I was looking at phones and seeing these as basically the new TVs. So I was using Facebook Live and getting massive audiences of hundreds of thousands of people per video. And it's literally me just seeing a niche, a gap in the market. Oh, PMQs isn't streamed in a way that is accessible to anyone in any way. I'll rig up a tripod and a phone and record it and stream it live to Facebook, and it did numbers. It did massive numbers, right? So I do look at this and I think with great, these are great tools and they give us great power, but with that comes great responsibility, and we
Spider-Man.
need to. Sorry, I didn't mean the reference. I haven't seen it.
You worked it right.
Yeah, worked it in the pun. I'd love to say that was a deliberate pun, but it wasn't because I haven't seen it. But I think we do actually have to look at the misinformation that's out there, in the sense that the other bit of jargon for you is something known as parasocial relationships.
Oh,
I haven't heard that one.
I love that one.
So
That's a good one.
this is Deb Cohen, who has written a book all about bad influence, right? So she's a previous Newsnight journalist, medically trained doctor, but opened up the BMJ investigations unit many years ago, right? So she's a top tier medical broadcaster. And her interest is all about parasocial relationships, where people trade and build trust and relationships on the fact that they're a doctor. Or look like a doctor, or even they're not a doctor, they're just an AI synthetic generated avatar with a stethoscope, right? And then they bring them all across that journey, and then they sell them something at the end, which is not evidence-based, got nothing, to back it up.
Yeah.
So we've got to be mindful of looking at this in, yes, there's a lot of misinformation out there because everybody can contribute to it.
Yeah.
However, there are great clinical content creators out there that are doctors on the front line. And this is James Somaru, who's someone else you should get on your pod. He's amazing. Got a medcoms company. You met him, in fact, SomX at Agency Day.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how clinical content creators are stepping in and filling the void left by Public Health England when it comes to providing evidence-based information in an engaging way. So it is a bit like the Wild West out there. And certainly from a day job, and a Bayer perspective day to day, we are super regulated, and so we should be, because we are putting medicines into people's bodies. How do we use that as a real positive and lean into the journalism, the broadcast, which everything has to be fair, balanced and accurate? So instead of seeing compliance as some kind of millstone around our neck, which is the, I would say, traditional approach for the industry, we see it as actually we've got to do this. We spend a lot of time, money and effort to do this. Let's tell that story. Let's explain that to people in terms of why we do that. Yeah. And then really lean into it to make sure that our content is the best it can be.
I find it so interesting because all these TikTok, all these Instagram, YouTube people, they can talk about whatever product they want. They can just talk about any medications, any medicines, accurate or not. Maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. They say whatever they want. You guys are kind of like hamstrung in some way, right? I want to kind of make that clear. You can't talk about the products.
We're not allowed to talk about drugs to patients or members of the public, and nor should we.
So that means in the content you're creating, you can't mention this treatment was used to help this person, that kind of thing.
But not to members of the public, no.
Yeah.
Do you feel that's what's creating the vacuum then?
No, because like we're in that B2B space, but the business to business is sort of Bayer to healthcare professionals,
right?
Yeah.
But then we're giving them the information and the knowledge to take it to business to consumer or business to patient.
Right.
And because what we can't be doing is interfering with that doctor-patient relationship or healthcare professional relationship, which is sacrosanct.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely vital. So I don't see it as a problem. I actually see it as a massive space for innovation. But yeah, whether it's Health Matters, whether it's podcast content, whether it's Bayer at, which is where Cormac and I have the studio, we fly around the world, make content at congresses, whether it's Heart and Kidney Care Alliance, we've got all these brands and digital media brands where we can communicate to a broad level.
Yeah.
I was just going to come in there as well, is that I had a point written down earlier about too often people hide behind the brand's voice and don't actually amplify what the actual messaging is that we're trying to get out there. So these brands which Kishan's talking about, the Heart and Kidney Care Alliance and Bayer at, is that we're actually collaborating with Bayer and using it to our advantage to then communicate the individual stories broken down into those different brands. They all have different messaging, but they all kind of simultaneously have the same messaging throughout them.
How do you identify those stories?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Well, for example, the Heart and Kidney Care Alliance is a patient's telling their stories.
Yeah.
So this is a platform which we provided to then basically amplify their voices. So they've walked it. We're not there to kind of tell them what they need to say. They're really open up on their discussions and how they literally went through all these different, for example, type 2 diabetes. How does it feel to live like that? Like we're kind of giving them the opportunity to tell us and the wider audiences about their experiences through this journey.
And I think it depends as well. I completely agree, Cormac, but it depends on the audience, right? So, Bayer at is slightly more journalistic. It's relevant for healthcare professionals that won't go to congresses.
That's one of your channels, right?
Yeah, well, it's a media brand, which we put on LinkedIn, put on different places. But yeah, we've got a consistent presence where when we turn up at a congress, it's Bayer at Reuters, which we've just come back from, or Bayer at ESC or whatever. All of these congresses that we go to, we distill down news stories. And we're literally like journalists on site. So we get the newspapers, the Congress newspapers when we're there. Depending on how big we go, is it an iPhone? Is it a broadcast studio setup? We're constantly listening on site for the emergent things. But then we're also planning and prepping in terms of social listening and like looking at the conversation either from last year's Congress or the Congress that's just in the days and weeks running up to it.
And the whole time what you're really trying to do is tell stories and give information that builds trust around I guess the channels that you're working on. Say this is a credible channel that we're kind of building stuff on. We worked with one of our agencies as well called Bodo Group, and we sat down with them, and I think messaging is the real important part about all these different brands that we have, because too often I think in life sciences and pharma that we try and focus too much on one major campaign and in maybe one therapy area. And we forget about the messaging part of it. That is never going to be consistent. It needs to be across the whole entire board. Everyone's doing a little bit with the same messaging across the board for it to be actually successful. And this is just a tiny piece of what we're trying to do within the cardiovascular team and wider, is create brands where the messaging is consistent. We sat down, actually looked into the messaging and how we're going to amplify it in different ways. So everything we put out sounds and feels the same. Okay, this is a little bit of like a circle back though, but it's like, okay, so you're trying to build this trust, but who are you? Who are you to try and build our trust? What's the background like? What's
Cormac, over to you. Who are you?
what's the story?
Well,
like
my personal story.
Well, yeah, I mean, how did this come about? Because you're trying to build this trust. surely some of the background and your backgrounds into this will kind of feed into that.
Yeah. So I think my background is massively creative. So it's started in film production, and then obviously come into the corporate environment. I was a creative in corporate, and Kish was also he obviously has the medical training and history, but he's also
You're
very
not
creative.
A doctor,
I'm not a doctor.
So that advice you gave me earlier, that was just okay, fine.
but we're both very creatives in the medical and pharma life science teams, and that's where we built our trust in creativity.
But Kish, you're also a doctor, right? So this is the...
Yeah, I think although I am a doctor and clinically, qualified and licensed to practice, all that sort of stuff, I think I've always felt a bit of an outsider from, and that this is the, I guess to your point, origin story, in the sense that I spent most of medical school looking at slides thinking, oh my God, I was so happy to be there. I'm in year 1, I can't believe it. I'm in year 2, this is so exciting. I'm in year 3, I can't believe it. By years 4 and 5, my mates were saying, look, Kish, you're going to be a doctor, get over it. But I just couldn't believe that I was there, right? Because I was, at the time, struggling with undiagnosed dyslexia, and all these people were talking about slides and graphs and just bombarding information at me. I had no idea.
How far through medical school before you were diagnosed then?
It was only my MBA.
You made it all...
I went to 34 years old, like 32, 33, maybe 33, 34, undiagnosed dyslexia.
Impressive.
But with looking back, yes, but at the time it was just brute force attacking medical school with passive learning, copying stuff out.
And did you have any experiences that kind of triggered your thoughts around the need for this space for trust and that kind of stuff, and the information that you're sharing?
So my mum and her family, when they came over from Uganda, her dad was poorly and sought medical attention. And, obviously I wasn't there, so I can't say, but apparently, so he was tired, he had night sweats, he had weight loss, he was very poorly, and was told so the UK, very welcoming, came into the country, that was great, but the doctor or the healthcare professional that he saw, sort of poo-pooed the symptoms and said there's nothing wrong with you, lazy immigrant, get used to the British way of life. Now that was devastating because he had spinal tuberculosis, and by the time they operated on him in a centre of excellence, he sadly passed away, and that was not a great outcome, right? So very early I've heard the worst that medicine had to offer. No doctors in the family. But then when I was 14, so around the millennium, 1999, so before you were born, Cormac,
crazy,
good few years, but then I went out to India with my grandma, so his wife, and I had a really severe reaction to anti-malarials. So I came back, I did like 5-6 flights in 4 days. I was in guides, I was fascinated by the cannula in my arm. And I was looking at it, and then I was panicking about cefotaxime and like, oh my God, I can't afford the tax. And they probably put something in that cannula and said, okay, don't worry about it. And then I was chilled out. So I'd heard the worst and experienced the best before 14, 15, 16. So to me, I just always wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah. And so what I'm kind of wondering about is like, so there's that whole idea of information and trusted sources of information that you can like come through.
I think medicine can be a bit of an inside, not an insider's. Yeah, it's the tools that we've got to democratize knowledge, if they're deployed in the right way, is a fantastic thing. And the care that I get, or the care that my family gets, or the care that my friends get, should not be dependent on the fact that I'm a doctor or the fact that I'm working in life sciences. And this is a function of the rate at which scientific knowledge is advancing. It's so quick, it's impossible for doctors around the world to keep up. Medical knowledge doubles every 73 days globally.
Wow.
Doubles,
right?
And we are contributors to that as Bayer, in terms of we're putting out science, we're putting out the stories, and that the care that we can give people really is amazing. But there's a big volume for people to keep up with.
Does that mean advice is also changing with that knowledge? or is it new advice that's coming through? Is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both.
Right.
And I think that's going back to the first part of the conversation in terms of why Cormac and I are at congresses, is because it's about how do we catalyse the conversations that happen at congresses, which are quite elite, which are quite the top tiers, the best of the best that go to them, to normal frontline healthcare professionals that a lot of them
just disseminate this information out.
They don't even know the congresses exist.
Yeah.
So they're not part of that conversation.
Well, they can't
So
come.
You're making that much more accessible.
The bridge. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think bringing in the Gen Z part of it as well is that we actually had the privilege of actually meeting a Gen Z doctor yesterday, and we were asking him like loads of questions about like, do you attend congresses? How do you see content? Because we were getting excited because we're so used to like collaborating with the older generation, and he said to us he doesn't really use LinkedIn because obviously he's used to like TikTok and Twitter and Snapchat or Instagram, these channels. But it's fascinating that you have, like you say, some people don't even know that these congresses exist. So how do we're so privileged to be in that situation to actually share those stories and actually amplify their voices onto these channels for these audiences.
Really interesting.
I think one of the things that we started talking about was the fact that we're content creators, you're content creators, you have Gen Z in your midst, which we do too, right? And I think it is true that when the three of us met, minus Cormac at that point in time, and minus the guys that are behind the camera here, we talked about the fact that we have these teams that have been built up, and there's a lot goes against Gen Z a lot of the time, but actually huge assets.
What I would say is that when I've actually first met you guys, I felt that Gen Z energy through you anyway. You know?
You say that. Not middle-aged men.
Now the cameras are rolling.
You say that to all the middle-aged men.
I could feel it through the blood, you know. So it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be here.
We're like honorary Gen Z. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, I'll accept you as one of our own.
Do you hear that, Jarrell?
No, in all seriousness, I think like Gen Z they're in the perma-crisis generation, right? You were born into perma-crisis, another little buzzword for you.
Permanent crisis.
Yeah, like you think about 9/11. This was our conversation when we met.
Yeah, it was.
So for your viewers, listeners, Zamir asked me, we met on a plane to Berlin and asked me if I wanted to take the window seat. So he thought we would be sitting next to each other because I was like, no, I'm all right, thanks, mate. I booked the aisle. No, I'm right. But then we had an hour and a half conversation, great chat. And I can remember us talking about actually how even though that was one touch point, the quality of the interaction was so good, trust was built up. So it becomes a very easy, would you like to come on this? Yeah, sure. Easy. Happy. But what we were talking about was in that perma-crisis generation, you being born into the world in and around 9/11, and then you look at everything after that, whether it be the global economic crash, 2008, whether even before that, the millennium bug, which never turned out to be a thing, but everybody thought it was going to be a thing, and then you look at all the stuff that's going on now, COVID, whatever else, the resilience that you guys have as a generation is immense. And also the degree to which you can consume information and content is unbelievable. It might be very, very broad and very shallow in the nicest possible way because it's the volume of information you're going through. Yeah. We have to tap into that.
Yeah.
And I might just jump in there as well, bringing it back to life sciences. I actually had a nice little phrase that I brought up the other day, which was we have obviously the Gen Z doctors, and we have the experience, and well, I say experience, that's pretty bit harsh, but the older generation is that a lot of the doctors obviously in the older generation will be scrolling through pieces of paper. And now we've got a generation where they're scrolling through loads and loads. I bet the old users you straight.
For anyone listening, so Kish, who is of the more experienced generation, has a notepad, whereas we have an iPad here with Cormac. Swiping right, okay.
But all I wanted to say is a change in how we communicate to our audiences. Is that going from the paper-heavy doctors to now the scrolling within seconds.
That's a really good point. And also, it's not good enough just to stay with one size fits all. Everybody, that example with Dev, different doctors, different healthcare professionals, they're super busy professionally. They're super busy with their personal lives. How do we go? I want to say where the bees are buzzing, but I know it's
one of his quotes.
It's a Cormac.
Ali himself.
So yeah. So as we were at Reuters last week, I was on stage, and Cormac was filming it, and like the panel discussion, I talked about, look, we want to go where the bees are buzzing, and to the point of sort of, I don't know whether this is a Gen Z thing or a Cormac thing. I'm going to put it as a Cormac thing. I can't put it to the whole of Gen Z, but he's so good at what he does in terms of filming. He's listening and he's thinking and he's creative. So then he WhatsApped me this this image that I'll pull up, which is like he's taken a screenshot, put it into ChatGPT or a photo, and like just artworked the whole thing in terms of go where the bees are buzzing.
Loads of bees behind him.
And then there was one where I was an interim Watford manager and everyone was joking, saying, oh, he's wearing a tie. We know that's AI. But the point being is, if we enable the next generation with these tools and the frameworks to use them in really good ways, the speed to quality content is immense.
I'm going to pick up on the point you touched on there as well. So this whole idea of trust and in the context of AI, how do you guys manage that? Because especially in the medical sciences and the life science stuff, the content you're creating.
I'm going to jump in on the content production. Our generation actually challenged that because I've written down in my iPad earlier that most companies will actually use AI to obviously boost the idea generation and content generation. But I don't think that simply will differentiate yourself, because everyone's going to be doing that. So I think that the bad use of AI that we'll see is that there'll be a high volume of content on our channels with very low insights and meaning. And then a good use of that will actually be generating audience questions through your content. So not saying this is us and we're the best and all the information that we're giving you is the best thing. We should be trying to create content which actually makes the audience have a question back to us, and we have that engagement in our comments and on all of our channels. So that's what I wrote down as what I thought was the good and the bad use of AI within what we're doing.
Yeah, nice. I completely agree, and that's living and breathing what we're talking about, right? In terms of empowering the next generation to say that and think that. I'd say from an AI perspective, sometimes less is more, certainly in terms of content. We were the first company, or one of the first companies, to put seals on our content saying, was AI used, was it not used?
Okay.
And AI has been deployed responsibly in this or hasn't, and it was a computer chip in a brain. But then very quickly we're finding out it's a sliding scale, and where is it used and how is it used? So, there's work to be done there. But I think some of it is also, it's about how do we make emails something, a communication form that people actually enjoy and want to use, right? So if we put quality content, and everyone knows they get one email a month or one email every 2 weeks, but it's going to be so full of useful, helpful content that they forward it to their friends and they save it and they look at it or they're excited by it, that's a great thing. So there's, I've mentioned this before in a couple of podcasts, but Paul Sims, who's a big kind of communicator in pharma and life sciences and agency side, he goes, there's enough sort of 6, 7, 8 out of 10 content out there, unless it's a 9 out of 10.
He was trying to get it in somehow, wasn't he?
Yeah.
6, 7. Mr. Gen Z vibes.
Yeah, I got it. Still got the puns. I should have said there's enough 6, 7 content out there. But yeah, if it's not an 8 or 9 out of 10, don't put it out. Don't put it out.
But again, coming back to the point that we go to a lot of congresses, I think a really good way that we can use AI is to take back information from those congresses, the debates, and what can we expect and what can we see that are trends throughout the healthcare professionals, and what are they debates that they're creating, so that when we actually look at our next content that we're going to build, how can we be one step ahead of the curve?
So I saw recently in a Reuters article, because I was scrolling, a report, a story about beta LLM. Firstly, what does that mean? And tell us more.
Sure. So it was part of a panel discussion that we had at Reuters, where we were talking about how do we deal with the fact that there's just declining web traffic, and what does that mean for healthcare professional engagement? And it came up in conversation. I was just thinking out loud, literally, that you've got B2B and B2C, which are established marketing principles. That's no longer good enough, because we're dealing with the human web but we're also dealing with large language model mediated web. So we should almost look at this as a whole separate audience, i.e. B to LLM. And I think it's interesting as well in terms of back 10 years ago, when somebody would pick up the phone to me and say, do you want to go on Sky? That was very nice. But now it's are you cited on an LLM? How are you visible in terms of everybody, your personal brand, whether you're in pharma or not, whatever you do, it's how do you have your body of work referenced and relevant to external audiences? And certainly within our perspective, in terms of if somebody, so Sajid, one of our interns, is doing great work at the moment in terms of auditing. I spoke to him this morning. He's opened up 120 different chat windows, all on the free models, because that's what members of the public will be using predominantly. So that's ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and Perplexity. And he's just asking questions to find out and test and audit how people are interacting with these tools and models. And some of them there's big knowledge gaps. And one of his findings that he told us about was if web search is turned off, they really, really struggle. So it's almost like there's fundamental weaknesses in these models that it's almost propped up by, okay, well, no, actually all the weight of opinion on the web is that, so let's not worry about this, we'll go with that answer. So I thought that was quite interesting. And that's another Gen Z digital native doing research and his thesis at Bayer, looking at these models. And how do we make sure that our content is fit for purpose for humans, whether that be healthcare professional, member of the public, carer, but or also LLMs.
Specifically LLMs.
Yeah.
Will someone please care about the LLMs? And the polar bears.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say, what about the polar bears?
I'll chat GPT.
All right, so we discussed a lot here, but ultimately, what would you say it comes down to? All this talk about trust.
The people.
The people?
Yeah.
Is that what we're losing, do you think?
Yeah. I think like the way that you and I met talking on a plane is not a normal way people meet anymore. Everything is mediated or facilitated through screens.
Or swiping.
Or swiping or swipe screens or whatever. But I think you've got to be able to, how do you communicate and articulate energy and build trust in that online environment? Because otherwise you're often not even going to get a foot in the door in terms of face-to-face interactions.
Really critical, and especially for big companies, right? Because you're doing this stuff for a really big company, which the industry gets a bad rap. But there's a lot of really useful, informative content and a lot of research is put out there, and you guys are trying to share it out in a trustful way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like I said earlier, that I think trust is built with the people and not the logos.
Not the logos.
Yeah.
You think people have been hiding behind logos a little bit too much?
Exactly, yeah. They need to be a bit more free. They've got the tools. Artificial intelligence, like Kish said earlier, there's about 6 different ones. Use it and play it to your advantage.
I think what's really interesting, if you look at brands, the market we're in with consumer brands in particular, that actually through social, it is those with putting people first in front of the brands that are actually the most successful.
Founder-led content.
Founder-led content is
people
like...
buy from people.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
All right, well... To all you beautiful people out there, don't hide behind your brands. Let your sun shine. And tell us what you think. Don't hide behind your thing.
Are you going to put your phone number in the comments for this one? Or
we can.
I can put your phone number in the comments.
You're welcome to. You're welcome to. Put a comment in with my number. It'd be great. And cool team. Thanks for coming on the show. It was awesome.
Really, really good.
From a plane to an office to the pod. Love it. Catch you guys on the next one. One love.
Peace out.